Hello there, Deu Sex Machina here, the Messiah, the manifestation of God. Now, I'm telepathic. I can read everyone's mind. I have a very high IQ. I'm actually moderately special. Now, people who can't understand me may think I'm a liar. I'm going to reel off a few things that are true for me that I'm not lying about. I, in my purity, rarely ever intentionally lie. A few times in my life, I might have said a white lie, but when someone accuses me of being a liar, I always get confused because I'm never lying. And so basically, here's some true facts. My SAT score in October 2018 was 1520 out of 1600. My subject test scores were perfect 800s on math level 2 and physics. As a freshman, I had the idea to suggest a quantum computing collaboration between a direct laser light lithography lab and a quantum computing lab to 3D print ion traps. Senior researchers executed it. The paper is on ArcZiv. It's called Geometries and Fabrication Methods for 3D Printing Ion Traps. You can look it up. My name is in the acknowledgements as the person who suggested the collaboration. Then as a McNair scholar, I published my own paper, optimizing a student-built rocket in simulation, with the Oregon Undergraduate Research Journal. All right. And then I got a 3.7 out of 4 GPA, an undergrad Bachelor of Science in Mathematics, double minor in Computer Science and Physics. And then I got into a really competitive grad school program, Northwestern Electrical Engineering Masters. My GreenFi account has planted over 800 trees in Kenya and Haiti to do sort of reforestation and also sequester CO2, offsets the emissions of over 80 gasoline cars. I lease a Tesla. The Tesla is currently by a rural home that has a Starlink on the roof. I bought the Starlink for the home. And the software updates for autopilot come over Starlink because the car parked outside is close enough to the modem inside the house to connect to the Starlink internet. Now, the Tesla autopilot, as per the most recent autopilot video saying no interventions or disengagements, can even handle the extreme edge case of the following. Very narrow rural gravel roads with potholes, and so on. Alright, now, further, alright, I made a speech on sexuality, talking about sexuality, my peak erect size, and civilization's problems. It blew up. It's nearly 8,000 views and 30 likes. I didn't plan the speech out or write it out. I just spoke and felt inspired and uploaded. I didn't study how to optimize the title or anything. I am also multi-talented. You can watch me playing Clair de Lune by Debussy. You can watch me dancing fluidly like Michael. You can watch me doing soccer tricks. You can watch me doing vocal impersonations, singing like Childish Gambino and Michael Jackson, and Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole. All right, and you can watch me doing martial arts. In the video Peace Through Strength, if you pause it at the precise sort of section of the video, precisely at the 26-second mark, you can find the precise frame where I'm maximally extended in a flying kick, kicking leg extended, non-kicking leg maximally tucked. Ironically, a female playing music, decided to choose the song "He Is Sailing," that ironically talks about the coming of a king or a messiah. All right, weakest and strongest will dance in delight. All illuminous our Savior, they bringing him forth, is talking about the coming of a king or a savior. And the recurrent verse, our true kingdom come. Ironically, as I run up and jump to do the flying kick, as I'm at peak extension, all right, the actual final word that is said is king. All right, so the verse, our true kingdom come. I run up, and it's starting to say our, and it says true. By the time I'm at peak extension with my non-kicking leg tucked, the final word that is said is king, right as I'm at peak extension. Completely unplanned and ironic and coincidental. All right. Anyway, now I also have an OnlyFans profile. There actually are females who are fans of me on OnlyFans because I'm pretty endowed. All right. But here's the following truth about that I'm also not lying about. All right. It's pretty complicated. All right. So, in the past, I admit I've exaggerated my size. In the past, I've communicated to people that my dick is 10 inches. I think my brain did that, not as an intentional lie, but probably as a joke and jest, because of how nutty the exaggerations of the pornographic industry are. Alright? And so, ultimately, as a light-skinned mixed brown guy, alright, as a grower, alright, my flaccid or unaroused sides when I'm warm and hydrated and relaxed will often lie between 5 and 5.5 inches. If freezing, it could constrict to 4 or something. Alright? Flaccid. Now, my maximum erect size, alright, there are two metrics for maximum erect size. There's the non-bone pressed erect length, where you just go from where your dick is attaching to your body to your head. Then there is the bone pressed erect length. Depending on the size of the fat pad, the difference between those two metrics is half an inch. Right? And so in non-bone pressed erect length, I will genuinely be over 8 inches. Slightly over 8 inches. In bone pressed erect length, I will at least be 8.5 inches. Alright? Compress the fat pad, press to the bone, go to head. Alright? So non-bone pressed, over 8. Bone pressed me, over 8.5. With shaft girth circumference about 6 inches around, and maybe approaching 7 inches around the glans or head of my dick, so I have a thicker head. And that's me. Alright? Now everything is exaggerated. The porn industry exaggerates dick size, and male humans exaggerate height. Alright? And so I was walking up to this guy, and this guy says, "Whoa, how tall are you? You're taller than me." I responded with 6'4". Then he said, "Whoa, I've been telling people I was 6'5" for years, but you are taller than me, which must mean that I am 6'3". Alright? And so then basically, my actual true height without shoes and with no hair on top of my head is precisely 6'3.5" inches. You heard that right. Alright? And so basically, many humans, if they see me walking around in shoes and there's like slight hair on top of my head, they'd assume I was at least 6'5". Alright? No hair on top of my head, no shoes, I'm 6'3.5". Alright? Not bone pressed, I'm over 8. Bone pressed, I'm at least 8.5. Alright? Okay? Alright, but I said I was 10 inches in the past. I think my brain did that because everything's exaggerated. Everyone's exaggerating. The porn industry is exaggerating. Alright? So anyway. Alright? So anyway. Now, here we get to the thing now. Alright? About my exaggeration to 10 inches. A famous male porn star, who I believe is now incarcerated because of assault crimes, Julio Gomez or The Break, his pornographic content would exaggerate him to 14 inches. His height on his porn star profiles would also be exaggerated to 6 feet tall, but people analyzed his height in comparison to his female co-stars and realized he's not that much taller than his female co-stars. And so Break, without shoes, without hair on top of his head, alright, is more like maybe 5'10". Alright? Maybe 5'10". Alright? And so, and he's not 14 inches, alright, the estimated bone pressed erect length for him was around 9.5. Alright? Further, if you ask Grok whether you seem to have a pelvic detachment, he'll analyze the internet and say yes. And so if you look at where Julio's dick attaches to his body, you can see at least 1 inch or so of some kind of odd kind of looking pelvic detachment that's extending his length. Some odd detachment. Alright? And so myself is 6'3.5", no shoes, no hair on top of my head, at least a 8.5 bone press, about 6 inch shaft girth, maybe 7 inch around glans or head. Alright, thicker head. Julio was 5'10", alright, maybe a 9.5 bone press, but he had a pelvic detachment extending length, alright, maybe a 6.5 to 6.75 shaft girth circumference, thicker than myself, but then his glans or head would be thinner than his shaft, and so basically I have thinner shaft than he does, but I have a thicker head than he does. Alright? So on and so forth. Now, Julio was thick because of his genetics, also because he had sickle cell anemia causing episodes of priapism causing swollen tissue, and pornographic actors often pump for scenes. Now, male pornographic actors, high-girth performers can also enhance themselves with surgical modifications from LA surgeons who do implants, or dermal filler, which is an injection. And then now, you also have the following, which is pumping for scenes to enhance thickness or size. All right. Now, not all black men are going to be large or thick. Hollywood catches a green light at black.com porn star, and he's thin like a wire compared to Julio or Break. All right. And then, by the life history model, which I won't go over again, the black or African origin genetic men are slightly more in terms of bone pressed erect lengths than the whites on average, but the world record holder is a white British man called Matt Barr in terms of largest medically verified bone pressed erect length. All right, so on and so forth. And so they're going to be grower humans, they're going to be shower humans. All right. Now, in my naivety, I sort of expected the world to be pure, all right, and people to be pure. But this is just an evil mess of insecure people who genuinely like plot against each other and like evilly like strategize, to maybe acquire information about a person to like exploit them or this, that, and the other. All right, and so I was a hyper intellectual, all right, with not a very sexual person, up until like graduating college even. Right, and so basically, the first time I had intercourse, I wasn't in the best shape. I was naive. I didn't know how to be maximally sexually performant. All right, I wasn't that good. The second time I had intercourse, the consciousness of the female involved said that she had around 4 orgasms and that her legs were shaking, twice in positions on the floor, twice in positions on the couch. All right, and then especially the girth around the head of my dick. She sat down on it with her whole body weight for like 5 whole seconds, and I couldn't even fit inside of her. She needed to apply lube because, my shaft girth is moderately thick, but glans is even thicker. Head is even thicker. Anyway, and so basically, and so then I, was a bit better the second time. Yet another time, this same woman says, "I'm bleeding." I pull out of her, there's blood on the head of my dick. And then she cleans up the blood, we continue the sex. I reach nearly peak size and so on. And I see her like scream and slightly pull away from me and clench her ass and whip her head around and look at me with wide eyes. And then I pull out of her and a blob of blood comes out of her vagina. And this actually happened. And she said it wasn't pureed blood. She said she's not losing her virginity. She says that could happen with her and larger men. And so I am a larger man. All right? That is me. Now, I realized the following, that to maintain your peak size during intercourse, many things need to be perfect. And so your legs need to be strong, your core needs to be strong, your cardiovascular health needs to be strong, and preferably your pelvic floor needs to be strong for strong blood trappage when standing and so on to maintain your peak size. All right? And so if all those things are strong and you're healthy and fit, you can maintain your peak size during practical sex requiring exertion. All right? And so I got ultra fit, and I even took standing pictures as if I were a male porn star. All right? There's a standing picture where I'm standing up and turned to the side and roughly at my peak erect size. All right? Then I got a frame of Julio kneeling and performing insertion roughly fully erect from one of his scenes. It looks almost like a mirror image. Okay? And so I decided to do the following, right? I made the sides of our heads the same. The distance from back of neck to nose, I made the same between myself and Break. The width of our thighs, the raw pixel count defining the width of our thighs, I made the same to get a scaling factor. And so in that scaled image, I'm obviously taller, right? I have a longer torso, all right? But analyzing the image, in that image, I did a rigorous analysis of it, and I appear to be like 97% of his length in that real image, and then maybe at least 92% of the shaft girth. But Break was one of the thickest. And then he would have smaller glands, I have larger glands. Right? Anyway, so on and so forth. Right? Now, ironically, that Break would exaggerate to 14 inches, and I look, that close to him in that real scaled comparison, makes my exaggeration to 10 inches ultimately mild in the scheme of things, given absurd exaggerations that apply to porn, and so on and so forth. Anyway, now, and so on and so forth. Now, so I have fans on my OnlyFans who have even liked that picture, right? And so on and so forth. Now, I believe in the irony theory, and so I talked about this in my theory, in my video titled "The Irony Theory," where basically the entire machine that is the universe, free will is an open question, and so basically, the conservation laws, the machinations of the universe, quantum mechanics, and consciousness seem to come together to often make the most ironic thing happen in a given scenario. All right, and so basically, this is kind of what happens. And so that's that scaled picture where I'm like a light-skinned brown guy standing on the left and Julio is a shorter black man on the right. Okay? Is basically like this to scale picture. And so one day I go out jogging, right? And so I go out jogging, and then I literally see a white woman walking two dogs. On the left is a tall brown dog. On the right is a slightly shorter black dog. The improbability on that for me to literally see, dogs resembling the scaled image of myself and Julio, brown taller one on left, shorter black one on right, on a leash, walked by a white woman as she's walking, is so improbable that I understand the machinations of the universe and I understand its signs, and so at times the humor of God is dark. All right, so breaking myself in that image, are just like two dogs on a leash by some white woman, if you get the joke. Anyway, and so this is why fate loves irony. Anyway, now, so this actually happened. Now, further, to fully explain myself in my purity, all right, recently over Christmas, I fell very ill. I actually had the following. I fell very ill with a flu-like virus and a high fever. The high fever killed my body's hydration level. It also killed my sperm count. The virus in general killed my energy levels and killed my libido. And so basically, when you have a high fever and virus, you're going to have erectile dysfunction if attempting sex because of how weak your body is. Your body is in survival mode, not reproduction mode. And so basically, I was on a tight schedule as to when I could be in the area to rendezvous with a woman. Woman as well was on a tight schedule as to when she could be in town to rendezvous with me. And so in my purity and my naivety, I agreed to see her when I'm still sick. She says, "Oh, I'm not afraid of getting sick." And so basically, what ensues is that sort of maybe a week or two prior to this rendezvous, I'd taken standing pictures, and even the standing picture where I look, which is scaled to break, where I look pretty close. But during this rendezvous, I am extremely weak. I'm sick with a high fever and virus, and I have horrible erectile dysfunction. I am weak, limp, largely, mostly flaccid, even during the intercourse, because I'm so low energy and just this fever and virus is making me just not sexually performant at all. And so ultimately during that intercourse, my size was often maybe 6 inches or even less, because my body was fighting this fever and virus. And so I'd recommend to probably not attempt sex when sick, because then now I can read everyone's mind. A bunch of consciousnesses are going to use that experience now as evidence, and all the insecure guys are going to say, "See, he has ED, evidence, ED, see, he's a 6, see, he's a 5. But ultimately, what happened there is that basically my body was very sick and weak, and therefore had erectile dysfunction. At present time, all right, I'm back to being potent. I grow to my peak size, all right? I'm high energy. But that time now, fever and virus, erectile dysfunction, all right? So I went from healthy, fit, took standing picture even looks close to break, to sick with a high fever and virus, having sex with erectile dysfunction due to weakness and illness, to, I'm healthy now, and so on and so forth. Anyway, and so I know, because I'm a genius and can read minds, that people are going to say, you're a liar. But I'm not lying about any of this. All this is the perfect truth. And so it's like, oh, you're a liar. You have erectile dysfunction. No. I just got very sick over Christmas. And so that high fever and virus caused abnormal erectile dysfunction, making me very weak. Now, in Christian marriage traditions, the commitment is you're committing in sickness and in health, right? And so basically, in any actual profound relationship, all right, you're going to make a commitment in sickness and in health, all right, and so on and so forth. Now, with the nature of the world and how evil it is and how competitive it is, if you allow yourself to be exploited or vulnerable and have intercourse when you're weak and sick, the world is going to use that as evidence to say you're weak or have erectile dysfunction. And all the men would say, see, evidence, he's weak, he has erectile dysfunction. Which is why I tend to have a dark worldview, because it's all just rotten. All right? I'm not a Christian. I detail my theological position in the video titled, my theological position. I am a non-benevolent deist. I believe the universe is a machine. Humans are machines within the machine. Some intelligent God designed the conservation laws which are held throughout the universe. Energy, charge, and angular momentum are all conserved. And that implies, in my mind, intelligent design. I don't pray to anything. Prayer is an evolution in relation to human goal-oriented behavior in which we constructed a delusion in something benevolent and prayed to it. And if given our outward actions, what was prayed for becomes manifest, the brain has a confirmation bias and attributes that to something benevolent actually hearing the prayer. And the cycle perpetuates and so on. Anyway, and so on. Now, so on and so forth. And so basically, this continues. And so on and so forth. And so on and so forth. And so I'm a non-benevolent deist. This is what I am. I'm not an atheist. I'm not a Christian. I'm a non-benevolent deist. I believe in some kind of God. I don't pray to it. I don't think it's benevolent. And so on and so forth. And evolution, natural selection, and so on allows variance and this, that, and the other to exist. All right? Anyway, so I'm young. I'm only 25. I don't own anything significant. I've been leasing a Tesla. The autopilot's gotten good. I published like these sort of autopilot rural gravel road things. The Starlink and the house on the roof of the house of the rural home is powering, immediate instantaneous updates whenever there's a software update to full self-driving, and so on and so forth. Anyway, now I don't care whether anyone thinks I'm a liar, and so I'm a highly secure person because of all I've said in this video is 100% correct, and so on and so forth. Now, ultimately, I don't believe in size superiority, all right? So the Chinese women, they have smaller vaginal accommodation than the Western women. Study was done. Chinese men have smaller bone-pressed erect lengths on average than Western men. And so the Chinese couples, all right, they're both small. They can be meant for each other. Sure. All right? And then there's genetic variation. And so when a woman becomes aroused, the cervix the depth of vagina, or where the cervix is inside the vagina, elongates. For some women, their peak depth of cervix when aroused will be 6 inches. For some women, their peak depth of cervix when aroused will be 8 inches. Given my peak size, I may be a good match for a woman whose peak depth of cervix is 8 inches. All right? The reason bone-pressed erect length is the metric for penis size rather than non-bone-pressed erect length is because during maximal insertion, the male fat pad does compress to the bone. And so the entire bone-pressed erect length is actually functional insertable length. And so my non-bone-pressed being slightly over 8, but then my bone-pressed being 8.5 or more, means that 8.5 to bone is insertable and is going to hit cervix of a woman who peaks out at 8 inches deep at cervix. For a male who has a smaller peak size, let's say a 6.5 bone-pressed peak size, then he could be a good fit for a woman who peaks out at cervical depth of 6 inches. And then there are the Asian couples with the smaller Asian women and smaller Asian men. All right? And so everything has gotten very rotten. And ultimately, I can read everyone's mind, and they're all a bunch of insecure guys who are saying I'm a 5. and using the time when I was very sick with horrible erectile dysfunction because I had a high fever and virus to say I was a 5. Well, I can read all your rotten, retarded minds, and it doesn't fucking matter. And so anyway, for example, there was an Indian billionaire I was listening to recently. He said he optimized for money, and basically he took the decision to have no debt. He talked about his wife. He had ups and downs with his wife. You know what the average bone press direct is for Indian men? About 5 inches. All right. If this Indian billionaire is an above average Indian, his bone pressed is about 6 inches, could be at peak. All right. Does that matter? You know, he has a wife, and then so on and so forth. The wife can have an elevated lifestyle because she's married to a billionaire. And ultimately, if I'm more endowed than that Indian billionaire, does that make me a stronger or better man than the Indian billionaire? The answer is no. All right. And so all this has gotten very silly, so on and so forth. Anyway, so I intend to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. This entire video has been correct, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so on and so forth. And so I figured out how to maintain peak size, strong legs, strong core, strong cardio, strong pelvic floor. You need to be hydrated, need to be warm, you need to be aroused. And further, you cannot be ill with a high fever and virus giving you erectile dysfunction, and so on and so forth. And so all the jealous men in the world would say, see, he's a 4, see, he's a 5, when I had a very high fever and virus giving me erectile dysfunction. And then the woman would call me a punk-ass bitch and a liar. Anyway, this has been the machinations of the consciousness of the Deu Sex Machina. The man who will turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. Anyway, I'm not a perfectionist. I just belched. Ultimately think that people who are perfectionists allow their pursuit of perfection to hinder progress. All right. So I have to find stopping points for these videos, because I could often just continue to talk for a while about many things. I don't know what they're going to do. I didn't expect the sexuality speech to blow up, but you know, that has blown up. And ultimately, I in purity will simply desire with my life to solve problems, to turn what I see as a hopeless, rotten, broken mess into some kind of happy ending. All right, this is the entire purpose of the channel. All right. Anyway, all right. Over 800 trees in Kenya and Haiti, nullifying emissions, reforestation, autonomous Tesla, no tailpipe emissions, factories are net zero, lithium mining for batteries offset by factories being net zero and no tailpipe emissions. Lithium can be mined from American lakes with minimal emissions or extracted from American lakes. Lithium batteries can be repurposed or recycled at end of life, and so on and so forth, and this, that, and the other, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so if you were married to an Indian billionaire who was an average Indian who is 5 bone press direct, or if he was above average Indian who is 6 bone press direct, but he's a billionaire, would you be faithful to that Indian billionaire and not cheat on a man who is more endowed? All right, this exposed the human condition. All right, where basically, all right, I'm committed to this Indian billionaire, I'm this Indian woman or whatever, and he's like a 5 bone press direct or a 6 bone press direct at peak, but he's a billionaire. All right, would you stay committed to that size for the rest of your life because you're associated with the elevation of his billionaire wealth? Or would you want to cheat on some man who's slightly more endowed? This explores how rotten females can be in terms of what they really fucking want, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, so yeah. Now, all right. So there's a picture on my OnlyFans. Where I look pretty close to break. Break would exaggerate to 14 inches again, and so realistically, I'm pretty close to break. And so my exaggeration to 10 is mild, given the exaggeration scale of porn. All right. Again, with zero exaggeration. All right. I'm a mixed light-skinned brown man. All right. No shoes, no hair on top of my head. I'm 6'3.5". I'm a grower. Flaccid will be 5 to 5.5 inches when I'm like hydrated and warm and relaxed. Flaccid could be 4 inches if I'm freezing. All right. Peak non-bone press direct length will be over 8 inches. All right. Peak bone press direct length will be over 8.5 inches, and the bone pressed is all insertable. And then shaft girth about 6 inches, maybe approaching 7-inch girth around head. All right. Second time I had sex in my life, woman was 11 years older than me. She was 35, 5'9", 160 pounds, very huge ass, kind of flat on top, facially kind of pretty, blue eyes, Norwegian. if I'm remembering correctly. And the first time I had sex with this older woman, she indeed reported 4 orgasms, shaking legs, twice on the floor, twice on the couch, and this, that, and the other. Yet another time I even made her start bleeding. She said it wasn't period blood. She said she was not losing her virginity. She said that this type of tear or bleeding could happen with her and larger men, and so my maximum parameterization, or size, as even per that real scaled image, with myself and Brake himself, I'm only slightly less than Brake. Alright? Slightly thinner shaft, but thicker glands, or head. Alright? And Brake had a pelvic detachment which was visible to extend length. I have none. Alright? So on and so forth. Anyway, alright? And so, my 8.5 bone press is, which is insertable. If really, even taller women don't really exceed a peak cervical depth when aroused of 8 inches. And so for pretty much all women, alright, the deepest their cervix is going to be when aroused is 8 inches. And so if I have an 8.5 insertable bone press, I'm going to be long enough to hit peak cervix for pretty much all women. Anyway, now and then the men that are not as endowed as me at peak size could be a good fit for women who are not as accommodating or have smaller vaginal accommodation and depth. Alright? Anyway, so you could view me as like an optimizer consciousness. Alright? Anyway, so on and so forth. At some point I have to stop talking. So I could come up with infinite more ideas. Anyway, so on and so forth. Yeah. Now, the level of how morally superior I am is kind of weird. But anyway, and that probably would make people upset. But I am a manifestation of God for the true theology of non-benevolent deism. All right, I will turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. I will reform theology. And I'm happy that some of my content has blown up because I'm spot on about all this. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, so yeah. Now quickly, as to like good evolutionary matches for each other. Let's say that you are, there's some white woman and then she's like flat like a board, no breasts, no backside, so on, but intelligent. Then there's a white man who's not that tall, not that muscular, and not very endowed. The average bone press direct in the US at peak size is 5.6, whereas mine is 8.5. All right, and so I'm all the way at the right end of the bell curve of like bone press direct lengths in the US. I believe having a peak bone press direct length of 8.5 when the average is like 5.6 is definitely, I'm in the 99th percentile or more in terms of my peak size. So I'm all the way at the right end of the bell curve. Anyway, again, non-benevolent deism, genetics, evolution, variance, mutation, natural selection. I'm a brown man, right? But the largest guy is a white man called Matt Barr, who's way larger than me. Anyway, now, so on and so forth. Anyway, so on. Now, and so basically, you could have like a white woman who's flat like a board, and so on, and then like a white guy who's not that tall or muscular and like average 5.6 bone press, but they're both like intelligent and like emotionally compatible and personality compatible, and they could be like mates for each other, all right? Because like she could be small, like no breast, no backside, not that deep in terms of vaginal accommodation, and then also the male could be small, and then it's perfect, right? So ultimately, when you're like finding a partner or a mate or like a partner through life, all right, there's not really this whole better or worse thing. People fall into a trap of like something is like intrinsically better or worse. That's how you get very, very into a very dark view of life. Ultimately, it's not about better or worse. It's about finding someone who is a good match for you. All right, no better or worse, just good matches. All right. Anyway, so on and so forth. And so myself as a more endowed man, I've been with a taller woman with a very large backside because my 8.5 bone press is going to peak out at her cervix, even made her start bleeding at one time. And so taller women with larger backsides are a fit for me. For guys that are not as endowed, it could be shorter, smaller women, not as large backside, not as large vaginal accommodation or depth. All right, then they're fit for them. Anyway, so on and so forth. All right, I'm trying to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending because everything's just gone to hell. Anyway, so also, Elon's net worth of over 800 billion. I'm not opposed to Elon. I think he's brilliant. I think he ascended to that level of wealth because of his visionary ideas and working like hell on the factory floor at Tesla, sleeping on the factory floor to make the company profitable and successful and do the thing, and that all of his companies are feeding together into his master plan. I made a speech called The Master Plan of Elon, where I detail how all of his companies are converging to his main vision and what that looks like. All right. And so basically his over 800 billion net worth is because of company ownership, where basically he has majority company ownership in Tesla and in SpaceX and so on and so forth, this, that, and the other. Now SpaceX is there's this initial public offering and so on. Anyway, now and they expect to actually raise money with that IPO and so on. Now ultimately Elon Musk there's a quote where Elon Musk himself said, "I want to create an age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want." And so frankly, and then he also wants universal high income, where AI enables universal high income. And there's so much like silicon capital or silicon workforce. What is silicon capital? Large language models doing information related jobs is silicon capital, right? Or silicon capita. So a human biological neural net, right, is bipedal, is a biological a capita, right? Now, a silicon neural net or a large language model AI assistant or AI assistant like Grok, all right, that is a silicon capita, all right, a bipedal robot like the new Atlas, which is all electric, by Boston Dynamics and Hyundai, or the Optimus bipedal, all right, that is also silicon capita. And so there exists now silicon capita in the form of intelligent AI assistants like Grok and bipedal humanoid robots that can automate physical work that is boring or repetitive, even with Tesla's new 22 degree of freedom Optimus hand, all right, where you can sort of automate repetitive, boring physical work, all right, and then the intelligent AI assistants like Grok can automate intelligent work in terms of work requiring manipulation of information, all right, and so ultimately, a good chunk of even white-collar jobs dealing with information are automatable by the current state of AI in terms of large language models and so on, right? And so on. Now, and so what that means is that if you add to the economy silicon capita, which is LLM AI assistants and bipedal robots doing repetitive, boring things that humans would be doing in factories or this, that, and the other, ultimately you get the following. The economy is productive and is making money for the country, all right? And so ultimately you then can usher in universal basic or even universal high income, because basically the silicon compute is making money for the country. That money can then be distributed to the citizens as universal basic or universal high income. For example, if you are a truck driver in the present time, the trajectory for Tesla's Semi is to include full self-driving for the Tesla Semi electric truck, and basically then there's no more truck drivers driving big rigs for like some long haul, just sitting down driving a truck for hours on end. But to my knowledge, some of the Walmart truck drivers have been making six-figure a year salaries sitting down driving a big rig, all right? But once you have a Tesla Semi, all right, with full self-driving that's electric, all right, automating away truck drivers, all right, that's not just gonna take away the truck driver job. The silicon capital or compute that is driving the Tesla Semi with full self-driving, all right, is making money for the country. That money can then go towards universal basic or universal high income for that displaced truck driver by Tesla full self-driving on the Tesla Semi, all right, and so on and so forth, all right. And so basically this universal basic or universal high income is because the AI and silicon capita is making money for the country, and you can use that money, universal basic or universal high income, for the citizens. But what I want to see from Elon, all right, if he's truly saying that he wants to create an age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want, all right, Elon Musk is quoted as saying, All right, that he wants to create an age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want. All right, what I want to see from Elon is that at some point his over 800 billion net worth in terms of company ownership, all right, instead of people having to sort of buy stock off him, all right, where they'd have to give him money and then he'd give them stock or company ownership, all right, that would still require someone to have money to get money off him, all right, and so then it would still be, just liquidating his company ownership. What I want to see from Elon is the following: free distribution of his wealth, free distribution of his company ownership among other consciousness. Why? To help bring about the age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want. Because if one consciousness is associated with over $800 billion of company ownership, all right, instead of having people buy that off of him, all right, he needs to at some point freely distribute that company ownership among other consciousness, that over $800 billion of value, not just allow people to buy it off him, just freely give it away to other consciousness, distribute the wealth. All right. At the end of the movie Tron Legacy, there's Kevin Flynn. All right, then he collapses he sort of recombines with Clue, then he explodes outwards like a ball of light. All right, I want to see Elon's over 800 billion net worth explode outwards like a ball of light among other consciousness to help create the age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want. All right, the way it currently is, his over 800 billion net worth, people are going to have to buy the stock off of him. People are going to have to buy the company ownership off of him. All right, they're going to have to buy the stock off of him. They're going to have to buy the company ownership off of him. All right, that's just giving him money. All right, and people have to have money to get the stock. Elon, at some point, you're going to have to spread your company ownership and your wealth among other consciousness for free. All right. This has been Deu Sex Machina. All right. Thank you for your attention.